Wow. Ooh. Hi everyone. Uh, Thanks for joining on this live. Can y'all hear me? This is always an issue whenever I start a live. Oh, okay, great. So yeah, it's 9 p.m. here, where I am in Singapore. Yeah. And I titled this live as a kind of casual reading session, mainly because I haven't been reading as much as I want to. And also because I really couldn't find the time to film a video this week. So I just still wanted to say hi to everyone still. The previous live that I did was really fun. A lot of you had so many questions, and so many of you were also discussing things in the comments. So I really thought it would be nice to do another live with everyone. So I know I've been doing a lot of climate related books and videos on my channel lately, but nowadays I have been reading quite a lot of things about Singapore. Well, Singapore is where I'm at, and I have an entire section on my shelf that's dedicated to Singaporean stuff. So like any nonfiction about Singapore, but also Singlit, which is Singapore literature. We call it Singlit, and lately there've been a few. I guess there's been a pretty huge event that sort of catalyzed me wanting to read more about Singapore, at least for a short break. So currently I am reading this book by Chua Bing Huat, who's a sociologist in Singapore, and it's about kind of like, I guess, the general rule of thumb of how politics is being run in Singapore. I know some people have been commenting, asking me about my stance on Singapore. Well, it's kind of hard to articulate because of the circumstances here. I would say there's always room for improvement. But generally, it's run like a corporation. The country is run like a business model, which can be great in some aspects in terms of economic prosperity. But of course, there are a lot of things that businesses don't care about, which I'm sure everyone is kind of familiar by now. But yeah, if y'all are reading anything, do feel free to share them in the comments. I'd like to know what everyone's reading. Yeah. Mm, So, and also what time it is over wherever you are. So it's 9 p.m. here. Um, pretty chill, pretty chill evening. Yeah, so I'm reading this book, Liberalism Disavowed, Communitarianism and State Capitalism in Singapore by Chua Bing Huat. This is a pretty dense book, so I am sort of flipping through some chapters as of now. I'm not thinking of reading too in depth, but if you're from Singapore, you would have known about the recent case regarding Yale and US. So Yale and US is actually my alma mater. So I graduated from Yale and US about in 2020, so just last year. And it's been an amazing program. Of course, fraught with a lot of tensions from both sides, but we never really felt that was a hindrance uh, to our education in the liberal arts college. I know it's getting a lot of international press as well, so everything's kind of in the moment right now. And because of that, I've been trying to read up little bit more about Singapore because it's very, very, very typical of Singapore to announce decisions that affect people on the ground without any sort of consultation in the process. Um, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go and Google Yale and US, and you'll probably see it in the news. Yeah. So, in case no one knows what Yale in US is, it's a liberal arts education, like liberal arts college that's based in Singapore. That was kind of a result of the partnership between Yale and NUS. So Yale from the US and NUS from Singapore to create a completely autonomous institution. But NUS has recently announced pretty haphazardly that the school will be shutting down. So that's a bit of a debate right now. Oh, okay. There's so many of you watching from Malaysia. So I'm guessing that y'all have the same time zone as me. Yes, right. Yeah, some people have requested for me to upload the audio only formats of my videos into a podcast. I did try to do a podcast like separately, uh, but I feel like doing a podcast without a fixed format would be not so, I don't know, coherent. I do have a podcast though that's called Gulam Laka, so you can search that. But it is functioning pretty independently from my channel, so I might not be touching the same topics there, and I haven't really updated that podcast for a long time. Wow, you actually rewatched my videos. I really didn't expect anyone to watch my videos because they're like 20 plus minutes long, which is, I don't know. I mean, I personally watch a lot of videos that are like 20 minutes or 30 minutes or even like an hour long, but I just didn't think anyone else would do that. Wow, so many different time zones. 9 a.m. Raining. Well, it has been raining today in Singapore as well. It has been raining for the past week or so. Yeah, Sengkang. Wow, nice neighborhood. Yeah. Well, I just got sent a book in the mail, actually. Uh, Pretty interesting. This is called Lion City, Singapore and the Invention of Modern Asia by Jivan Vasagar. Pretty interesting. I would say it's a very recent publication. I think only just last month or something. And I would say this is geared towards people who are a bit, you know, new but not so new to Singapore. So I wouldn't really say this is a book for Singaporeans, but more for like, I guess, people beyond Singapore's shores, honestly, because some of the things here are pretty repetitive if you already know about how things are like in Singapore. But I would say it's a pretty good comparison, as a pretty good book with sort of, because a lot of books about Singapore tend to portray Singapore in a very positive light, which is something that is very intentional. Of course, a lot of outward facing things. Singapore does do very well on the metrics, but everyone knows that the metrics don't paint the full picture. Yes, Singapore books are generally available in English because that is our main, that's our official working language. So many books are published in English, unless you are looking specifically for books that are published in the other, you know, languages. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like people have really bought into this narrative of like Singapore exceptionalism, which is kind of true because, a lot of the circumstances here were exceptional precisely because it was intended to be exceptional. Um, yeah. Oh yeah, IG. I'm not really active anymore on Instagram. I have so many reasons, mainly because I just feel like the platform, it hasn't been showing me people that I've been wanting to follow as much, and I find that, yeah, generally a lot of people tend to, yeah, just too much information going on Instagram a lot, and I find myself scrolling Instagram much more than I was doing other things like reading. So that's why I'm not so active on Instagram anymore. Yeah, I kind of feel like it's a never ending cycle if you want to compare how life is like across different countries or like different circumstances. Of course, every circumstance is going to have their own difficulties, but also their own positives as well. Like in Singapore, definitely there are a lot of positives associated with living here. The security, the sort of like stability, predictability. Some people might really like that, and usually if you're middle income to high income, Singapore is a great place to live because material comfort is a huge thing here. However, if you are, say, lower class or lower income, and also if you are, a foreigner, especially if you are like a lower skilled foreigner, in that case, you'll be considered a migrant worker. Circumstances aren't so good for you here in Singapore. But it really depends. Some people might say that working in Singapore, at least you would get wages or salaries that are like higher in your own country. I mean, it's give and take. I kind of feel like there's no blanket generalization we can make. What we can do is just to make life less hard for the people who do struggle with life. At least that's my take. Yeah. Oh man, yeah. So recently, our prime minister also had a National Day rally, in which he kind of tried to address majority privilege or like Chinese privilege in Singapore, but he kind of just dismissed it and said it didn't exist or it doesn't exist, which is really unfortunate because yes, like Chinese elitism is very much embedded in the system, but people are not very willing to acknowledge that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the whole like foreign talent thing is pretty upsetting. I mean, the more you think about it, I mean, I don't work in sort of the finance sector, like the very corporate multinational sector, but it seems like a lot of expats do come here and they don't really integrate well into society, or there's no incentive other than, kind of treating Singapore as a hub, kind of a job, just a kind of a stepping stone in their career, which is like inevitable because it's kind of how Singapore has positioned itself in the world. Yeah, so uh, is there any surfing in Singapore? I don't think so. I don't think our waves are big enough to surf. I did cut my hair. Yeah, it was getting a bit too long and hard to manage. When I stay in Singapore, I would like to refrain from making that information public. I'm okay. Do I practice meditation or self-expression? Yeah, so I don't know whether you've seen like some of my other videos where I do talk a little bit more about mindfulness or like other things that I do. But I'm a huge like I don't say huge, but I do practice mindfulness quite a lot and meditation. And I also do a lot of journaling. So journaling has been my go-to thing for like I mean, ever since I could write, so I think ever since I was 7 or 8, I always kept a diary. So I always journal. Um, so that's one thing. Another thing I like to do is to have tarot card readings. I don't know whether this is new age spirituality, But I find that tarot card readings really help give some perspective, not necessarily from a very magical or mystical point of view, but rather from a very much more storytelling point of view. Yeah, so I do that sometimes if I feel like I need a bit more of an outside perspective. Oof. Wow, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I heard so much about that book, and that it's really emotional. There's so many beautiful quotes from that book, though, that I've seen floating around. Climate Wars. I've not heard of that book. Interesting. Isn't Kiki's Delivery Service a movie? I was actually just watching that like last week. And I really love the cat. I think what the cat's name was something Gigi or something. Wow, so many different books. Yeah, I actually do alternate between books a lot. And that has been the main reason why I haven't been able to upload any monthly wrap-ups because I'm just so in between so many books now. Yeah. Yeah, I should really kind of work on my fiction reading though. I mean, I really tell myself that, but I am terrible with reading fiction because I feel like I'm someone that either has to like go all in and spend a whole day reading a story or I just don't. Oh, I didn't know the movie was based on the book. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, my cat is sleeping now, so she'll wake up later, I think. Yes, Haruki Murakami. I've actually read what books have I read? Was it Norwegian? No, I actually have it here. Norwegian Woods, I think. I read that book. I have it as a copy. I found it interesting. I can see why so many people are fans of his work. But something about it just feels a bit self absorbed to me. I don't know about Murakami's writing, but I can sort of see the appeal in it. And I don't think there's anything wrong being self absorbed. It just wasn't something that appealed very strongly to me. But it definitely was very memorable. Yeah. Oh, thanks for the compliment, Eric. Yeah, I just feel like short hair is just a lot easier to manage. Thanks so much for watching the ambition video. I think it was doing a lot better than the previous video on labor, so I was really surprised that so many people seem to want to watch that. Yeah. Is it easy to get secondhand books in Singapore? I would say nowadays it is a lot easier. So you can get books from this building called the Bras Basah Complex. They have a lot of secondhand bookstores there. You can also get it off like secondhand apps like Carousel. A lot of people do sell books there. Also, there's a website called Thrift. It's like a THRYFT. Thrift, like the Y replacing the I, and they're like a social enterprise. I think that they kind of sell secondhand books while funding education in I forgot what country, but it is for a good cause. Oh, I really struggle sometimes with taking notes. Sometimes I just let myself read a book and not be too hard on myself. Because it definitely going through like education system and all that kind of pressurizes you to have to remember everything about a book. But nowadays, what I try to do is to focus on three most important points that I gleaned from the book, and also my personal reflections while I was reading the book. I think that's a lot more useful for me instead of like having the head knowledge of certain things. Wow, so many interesting books. I don't stream on Twitch. I don't know about Twitch though. I kind of feel like I'm not at that level. Do y'all watch Twitch? Yeah, my camera is not really good. I'm just using my current laptop webcam, but I am using my Yeti mic. Yeah, I've been thinking of upgrading my webcam in the case that I am doing more lives in the future. If y'all have good recommendations for live stream appropriate webcams, do let me know. I'm not the best at technology. Have you bought a book and then have had a hard time? Yes, definitely. There is this book called Duty Free Art by Hito Steriel. I think it's a book about digital technologies and art, and it's an amazing book so far. But it's just so out of my element that I read 3 chapters and I gave up on the book. But not because I didn't like the book, but rather because it was just too difficult for me to handle. Also, Thrift only donates 10% to charity. Also, that's Books Beyond Borders. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah. So Books Beyond Borders is the one that, yeah, sells secondhand to fund the education program. I don't know which country, but yeah. Yeah, so far I've been using a lot of the NLP app. It's really useful. Who are my top YouTubers to watch? Okay, really, I would say Our Changing Climate is a channel that I really love to watch. Um, the information is just so direct and it's so like clearly, uh, yeah, it's so like no BS on that channel. Also, I really enjoy watching ContraPoints. I don't know whether y'all know ContraPoints, but I really love her whole approach to topics. Actually, watching her was really one of the main reasons why I started to get a lot more invested in developing my own inquiry into things. Yeah, yeah. So say those channels. Other channels. Mm, as for like local YouTubers in Singapore, I don't know whether y'all know Sneaky Sushi. His content is really funny and entertaining and really like refreshing. And I still think that he manages to be quite respectful, although of course he does kind of use a lot of parodying sort of humor, which can be seen as kind of rude, but I still think he's kind of respectful about it. What was my favorite book of all time? Okay, everyone's going really fast. Uh, well, this is really difficult to choose a favorite book of all time. Do I have a favorite book of all time? Um, I think it really depends, honestly. I did do a video on like the books that changed my life. So those are the books that I feel were came to me at really pivotal moments of my life. But I don't really have like a single book. I would say the one book that had the biggest transformative experience for me was Quiet by Susan Cain because I read it when I was pretty young. I think when I was 16. And it was the first book that gave me an understanding of how the world was wired in a way that emphasized certain qualities over the other for like no apparent reason. So I think that was the first book that really sparked that consciousness in me. How do I do the settings on my Blue Yeti? I actually don't do any settings. This is just the default settings. Yeah. I think the mic is just really good. Do I prefer digital or physical books? Honestly, I don't have a preference per se. I would say that digital books are very useful for convenience, especially if you're toggling between books. And it allows you to access so many books. with just one device. But for physical books, right, I think nothing can really beat the experience of like lending someone a book with your annotations in it. Because of that, then I really enjoy reading physical books, but at the same time, they do take up a lot of space. Yeah. Okay, so maybe I can convert my DSLR into webcam. I might explore that. Oh, Melanie, that's so cool. Okay, that you volunteer with them. Yeah. Not sure if I bought from them before, but I've seen their stuff all over Instagram, so that's really great. What's your favorite trashy novel? Let's see. Favorite trashy novel. Honestly, yeah, that's a good question. Trashy novel. I think the fact is that for me, I think I treat reading more as like a much more like a serious thing. And I think for like trashy stuff or like entertainment, I would normally go to like video. So like I my guilty pleasure is like watching K-pop idols. Yeah, so like NCT, if anyone knows them, usually if I want to have kind of like a chill, comfortable, kind of like relaxing time, then I'll watch a lot of the videos that they make. Any cool bookstores to recommend? Um, yeah. Okay, bookstores. I think it's really sad that books actually closed. Um, yeah, but for bookstores, I would say there's this one called Grassroots, I think. Let me Google that. Grassroots. So there's a bookstore called Grassroots Book Room. It's they have a lot of Chinese books, but they also have quite a lot of interesting English books as well. I would also recommend Wada Books. Yeah, Wada Books has really very interesting selections. Has a really interesting selection of books as well. I would say, yeah, these two bookstores. There's a lot more of an intentional creation of the books in these stores. Yeah, yeah. Little with Books is more of like, yeah, I think they have a quite a wide range of books as well. Yeah. Have you traveled and discovered a particular book on your travels that really transformed you? Yes, actually, yes. So I usually read a lot of books when I'm abroad because I've had two overseas experiences. So I did do a summer internship in South Korea, Seoul, and I also did a semester exchange in Tokyo. Um, yeah, and during and for me, like I always enjoy traveling pretty much by myself. So I read a lot of books during that period of time. I would say for me, the most important book or like the most significant book was uh oh, what was it called again? Oh no, I'm drawing a blank. Let me go search it. Oh, it's called Crazy Like Us, The Globalization of the American Psyche. I mentioned this in the previous stream, and I also mentioned this in a few books, and in a few videos before. And it was especially pertinent to me at that point because when I was on SEM abroad, there was the period where I was in between a psychology major and an anthropology major. So I know I mentioned that I was an anthropology major. The story was that I was a psych major up to my third year, and the second semester of my third year was when I did my semester exchange. And that's when I decided to switch to an anthropology major instead because I had a anthro major minor at that point. And this book was the main reason why I made that switch because when I was in Japan, I was doing a lot of anthro related studies. I was also doing a lot of cultural studies, and that was like a huge difference from when I was doing primarily psychology mods back in Singapore. And the more I went into it, the more I realized that okay, I actually want to be more critical of psychology and be more critical of this sort of rational mentality towards understanding human behavior, or like this very clinical approach to understanding human behavior. And so this book really cemented that for me. Yeah, so that was a book that was especially important. Yeah, in terms of me studying abroad, I guess. What book got me into reading in the first place? Okay, so I mentioned this a little bit in my video on like the role of literature uh, in climate change. But I first started out as a science obsessed person. So like I would read science stuff all the time. Like my favorite books were encyclopedias. I was a nerd. I just really liked memorizing animals and all sorts of things. But the change happened when I was in sort of, I guess, like middle school, like secondary school. So that's when I took literature for the first time. And I read To Kill a Mockingbird. Not just that, I also read The Crucible, and I also read, what's it called? The Chrysalids. And these books really opened my eyes to how, you know, you can't just know the science about things, but you also have to know the stories, and you also have to be a lot more critical about the way that we see the world, or how people judge each other, or how people, how the world was so unfair for some people. So as I think a lot of you know about To Kill a Mockingbird, I mean, at that time I didn't really know the full significance of it. I think during that time I also read Flowers for Algernon. So I was reading all these like really complex books when I was so young, and obviously at that time I didn't know anything, but these books really helped me understand that the world was not a just one, and that the human condition was something that we all had to grapple with. So that was what got me into wanting to read more further on. Of course, that developed still into like a non-fiction, like primarily non-fiction interest, but a lot of these like books kickstarted my interest in reading in general. Yeah. Yes, my name is Nat. I mean, Nat is my nickname, so yeah. Actually, I use Storygraph, but I don't really use that as much. Yeah. Oh yeah, so it's a Nettie Nook. So Nettie it's derived from my nickname, but also it's supposed to mean like someone who's dapper. I don't know. I mean, I just googled it and I just like randomly put it together. Oh, okay. I mean, definitely sociology will also deal with a lot of very similar questions. I just think that sociology is more of like the framework of ideas, whereas anthropology is a lot more of the applied version of it, or like sort of ground up knowledge. So a way that a friend put it to me was that sociology was kind of bird's eye view. It was like kind of like from the top down, whereas um in anthropology, knowledge is produced from the bottom up. So you derive frameworks from bottom up approaches. I don't think there is a huge like I don't think either or is better. I think sociology has its merits as well. So as long as you're interested in, yeah, like society, it just depends on what approach you want. It's just that anthropology, I think someone did put it across to me before that it's basically professional storytelling. It's like academic approved, academia approved storytelling. So, I mean, you can see it sort of that way. I read The Chrysalids. I don't think it's a great book, but for me, when I was 16, it did give me a lot of things to think about. When I was in South Korea, I was actually working in a offshoot branch under the UN. It's like a small education branch dedicated to global citizenship education that's under UNESCO, but it is a very small branch. But yes, it kind of dealt more with like dip- diplomatic things. So that was my first time doing such a job because previously I've always done F&B. I've always done things that were much more like service oriented. Um, but it was really interesting to see that shift or that difference. Yeah. I would say because the office that I worked in was a very like global focused one or international focused one, it may not be the most Korean work culture. But at that time, I think a lot of my colleagues treated me in a very Korean way because apparently I could speak enough Korean for them to feel comfortable doing that. But I would say I wouldn't know the full extent of Korean work culture. Yeah. Although I've heard that they tend to work a lot, and that the after work culture is pretty intense, which Singapore doesn't really have. Yeah. Uh, what is the thing that I wake up for? Okay, nowadays I wake up for my cat. That's like the most. Wow, I am like so gone for my cat. Um, but before my cat came into the picture, um, I honestly live for many different things. One of them is music and dance. Being able to move freely to music and to feel in tune with my body. That's one of the greatest blessings I think in life that anyone can ask for. Uh, what drives me to do the things I do? I think it's really just for understanding. I think really, when I read these books, I sometimes feel like it's just for me to seek clarity in the things I do. I think by nature I'm a very restless person, so I'm always trying to figure out how things work or why things are. Yeah, and I think it's just something that I can't really get rid of, which also kind of contributes to my tendency to overthink. But I mean, I just yeah, yeah. Thanks so much, Shanice, for watching from Singapore. Slow living and ambition. Uh, how do I reach this enlightenment? I think it's wow. I think enlightenment is a pretty like huge term. I think it's really hard to say because I don't think I'm really there yet. I'm still at a stage in my life where I'm very much subject to a lot of pressures around me. Pressures to settle into a job, pressures to do something worthwhile with my life. A lot of people are cutting me a lot of slack because I'm young, and because of the whole pandemic situation. No one's really expecting um, maybe people at my age to be so successful so soon. So I'm in a very much liminal space where people can cut me some slack with regards to that whole issue. But I think it's really because of the whole. I think it's really my first job experience that made me reflect so much about ambition, and seeing how ambition can be separated from career aspirations. That was like a big thing, because I think nowadays when we think about ambition, we always see it in a very professional sense. We always see it in a very career focused way. And I think in my first job, I was pretty ambitious. I was coming in thinking that I could make huge changes. Like I thought that I could effect some kind of substantial change in the organization. But it was the complete opposite. I realized that I just wasn't able to do anything given my position as an entry level person, and that the higher ups were in no position to listen as well. So that's when I realized that what was the point of being ambitious in a work setting or in a career setting when literally so many things are stacked against you, and no matter how hard you work, you are not going to be fairly compensated for that work. And there's no guarantee that your work will still align with your interests, or that the company has no, or like the organization has no interest to make sure that their employees still feel as though their job is relevant. So with that whole experience, I started to reevaluate what was ambition. I think for me, it is pretty ambitious to want to live your own life by your own terms. I think to me that is like the most ambitious thing. To want to define your own success. For example, like for me, to want to have my own cafe space where I can have like a physical communal space for arts or for literature, that is like ambitious, right? Uh, yeah. So I think eventually, as I started to feel much more fulfilled, like doing my own reading, um, and doing this my own like self reflection and sort of setting up my own expectations for success, then it kind of everything kind of sort of broke down, and it made me realize that how we use the word ambitious or ambition was not questioned enough. Like it was used in such a narrow way that I think would do a great disservice to a lot of other people whose interests are in other areas and whose hard work we should value a lot more as well. So yeah, I guess that's how I came to my enlightenment. I don't know. How was my view on the Yale and US closure? I don't know whether y'all know, but I am an alumni of Yale US. I graduated from the class of 2020, so of course, you may see me as being biased, but I do think that the closure was completely unwarranted. I mean, quite frankly speaking, the the opening of the school was already on pretty much fraught ground. Both parties were not entirely clear about what the desired outcomes were for the college, and the entire experience, like me throughout my 4 years in the college, there have always been doubts and skepticisms about the college and what it was supposed to achieve. So I'm not too surprised if the college eventually was unable to continue the partnership between Yale and NUS. That being said, I totally don't think that it was warranted for the college to just shut down like this. Um, if it had gradually transitioned to a fully autonomous college, I think that was within the bounds of what was expected or like reasonable. But for the college to be completely shut down like that, and for a lot of these very like reckless mergers of departments and disciplines without any sort of consultations from the faculty and the students, I think is a huge mistake on the NUS side. Yeah, so that's my view. But of course, I'm an alumni, and it's in my own sort of sentimental interest to want the school to continue its legacy. Do I play chess? No, I'm bad at chess. Yes, Anderson is really cool. I'm actually reading this book, Arts of Living on a Damaged Planet, Ghosts and Monsters of the Anthropocene, which is also partially edited by her. Yeah. Is climate advocacy activism strong in your country? I would say it's present. Uh, yeah. But generally, advocacy in Singapore is very hard. It's a very hard topic to sort of go around. Yeah, The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. So I actually read that book for my O levels. So it was an examination text. Yeah, I really hope I can set up a cafe in the future, and just keep it as a small little comfortable space where a lot of regulars can come for good coffee but also good conversations. That's always been my dream, I think, to just like run this neighborhood cafe, and to have book clubs, and to have, all sorts of, yeah, anything really. Yeah. So what if I didn't move my channel towards reading your books? Yeah, so really interestingly, I started out my channel wanting to do content on music and wanting to do content on general stuff like vlogs. Um, Maybe dance, I don't know. But I feel like music has always been a huge part of my life, so I did want to start out making playlists, but I realized that there's so many copyright issues on YouTube, and videos can easily get blocked or like removed because of copyright. So I quickly abandoned that because I was like recommending 10 to 20 songs in a video, and it was just really time consuming. I feel like if it wasn't for books, maybe I would do like those home cafe videos. But the fact is that I live at home, so it might not be the best idea because there's gonna be a lot of disruptions. uh, Some of my favorite movies. Oh man, I have to like recollect this. Mm. Well, I am so bad at recalling the movies because yeah, movies. Nothing is coming up to mind. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I've just okay. I don't know. I feel like I don't really have specific movie recommendations or like movies that I really enjoy. Yeah. Yeah, but I do watch a lot of indie movies though. Mainly because I have friends who are interested in a lot of like indie movies, so I just follow them, and that's a whole experience. Yeah. But other than that, like I really enjoyed a few Netflix series. I think Korean dramas are like guilty pleasure. But there's also like, oh, I can't really remember. Yeah. Oh man. Studio is it Studio Gilby? Still Studio Gilby? I love their movies too. I feel like, yeah, especially the Howl's Moving Castle. That was really good. Can I ask for some life advice? Yes, sure, but you have to ask me more specific questions. Yeah, a college being shut down for being liberal. I think that's a huge issue. I think a lot of people see Yale NUS as being equivalent to liberal values, but I think I don't know whether anyone has seen like James Lim's infographic posts about this, and it's really about the presence of a liberal arts education in Singapore, not necessarily about liberal education, because there are conservatives that attend a liberal arts education. The whole point is to have a multidisciplinary education where there is a very open and very inclusive space where students can very safely engage in topics of discussion, and then bring that out to society. So I don't really think it's about where on the spectrum you land, but rather about having an environment where that sort of inquiry is being encouraged. And of course, progressive ideals are going to come out of such discussions, primarily because, yeah, like, these spaces are concerned a lot about justice in society. And I think that these are issues that people would agree on, regardless of whether, you're so called liberal or conservative. Yeah, I think it's a huge misstep if people are conflating a liberal arts education with just being liberal. I think it's more than that. I think it's about that space of learning that we tend to lack in Singapore, honestly. Yeah. Why do you think alumni are speaking out so strongly about it? So, okay, I know a lot of people are interested in that. Like, why are the alumni so vocal about this? I think first of all, it's really a culture of accountability that YNC has in the administration. So, I think this is something that maybe people from YNC will understand a bit better, but there's always been a very strong culture of transparency and accountability within the campus. And I feel like it's only very natural for the alumni to want to demand answers, even if they're not in the college anymore, because it's also about the principle of the institution as a whole, which concerns them regardless. I think, secondly, is also very much how do I say this? It's also very much a question for the future, because the fact is that if the college is going defunct and there's no clear answers on what that means for graduates, because you actually need a lot of information about your undergraduate program in order to apply to jobs, in order to apply for postgrads and things like that. And there are actually a lot of students right now who are on masters or looking to further their studies who are directly implicated. So currently, there are only four, now five batches of graduates. So if you think about it, 5 years, some of them are probably working for 5 years, but many of them are still furthering their studies. And this has direct implications on their qualifications as well. So, I think, if you're coming from an institution that's a lot more established like NUS, the outcry might not seem very understandable, or like it seems a bit out of proportion. But I think it's pretty proportionate because the school is sort of very new, and there's just so many things that are unanswered, and with out of our control, which you maybe in a very established institution like NUS won't have any issue addressing because they have the resources. Yeah. So I think that kind of explains the alumni um, reactions, or at least from my perspective as an alumni. Wow, okay, one of my favorite places for coffee and drinks. My favorite cafe is Free the Robot at Telok Ayer. That's my favorite place. I love their um, espresso cola. I think they make their own cola, like soda. I love that place. Um, the baristas there are really cool. Another place I really like is Homeground Coffee Roasters at I think it's at Juchat. Yeah, yeah. So those two are my favorite places. What kind of dance am I interested in? I'm interested in house dance. Don't know whether anyone knows house dance, but house dance makes me feel really free, and it's definitely rooted in the idea of freedom, because it kind of stems from this LGBTQ and minority experience in the US where freedom of expression of their body was so rare. So that was the kind of like physical freedoms that I resonated a lot with. What would I do if I was not a YouTuber? I don't I what would I be doing? I would be doing, I don't know whether I would be doing social media as much actually if I didn't fall into booktube. I'll probably just be serving coffee, just chilling and reading. Yeah. Yes, I've read Pachinko. I really love Pachinko. I think it was an amazing story. If you like Pachinko, I think you would really enjoy Beauty's Wound by Eka Kurniawan. That is one of the best books I've ever read. I could be biased because my family is Indonesian, but yeah, I love that book. Very similar premise, uh, but yeah. Do I practice my articulation? Not really. I think it's maybe I'm just a bit talkative by nature. I'm a Gemini moon, if that helps. What do you think about hustle culture? I don't like hustle culture, unfortunately. I kind of feel like it's sad that we have to work so hard just to make a living. I was actually talking about this with some of my friends that like nowadays it's so common to talk about a second income or like multiple incomes, and it's so common to talk about passive incomes. I don't remember this being such a huge thing like maybe 5 years ago. Back then I think people were much more preoccupied with securing just one job, and you know the evenings were relatively free and weekends were free as well. But now even the time after work is meant to be productive, so you're sort of like even the most basic thing, it's like even the most basic salary is doesn't give you the same sense of security anymore, which I think is so unfortunate. Like I think it's fine if people want to work harder and earn more, to give themselves more material comforts, but to then reinforce the idea that the basic salary, or like the basic kind of, yeah, I guess, income, right? If that's not enough, then why are we you know sort of enacting this huge pressure for everyone to have to work extra hard to meet a minimum requirement of living. And I think someone pointed out in the comments before, like last, I think previously, that this sort of mentality is very ableist. And I agree. I think that it is a huge assumption to think that everyone can just work harder in order to secure a more comfortable life, because the fact is that not everyone can afford to be extra productive. And so that's my general take on hustle culture. I feel like nothing wrong with people wanting to work a little bit more to gain more, but if that sort of shortchanges everyone else in the process, then is that really okay? And should there be a cap for that? Should we be capping people from making an enormous, almost unethical amount of money? You know. Okay, so the book is Eka Kurniawan, so EKA, and then KURNIAWAN. I think I can write it out. Yeah, please excuse me. Do you think we don't have a culture anymore? That's why I really think it's super important to develop like localized knowledge while being aware of general trends. That's why I think for me, like I try my best to read as much about Singapore as much as possible, because It's true, like there's no point knowing what happens in other countries and around the world if I don't know anything about my own country. And if you look further, there's always going to be a culture or a unique, you know, yeah, like a unique culture or attitude, in each place. Um, yeah, it's just that we tend to prioritize certain groups of culture over the other. Yeah. What are your thoughts on academia? Yeah, so actually, I have been thinking about this for quite some time because someone in the live stream the previous time did ask me about my thoughts on higher education, and I feel like it's really, really frustrating that financial finances is such a huge burden to the students. I feel like higher education is something that should be much more accessible, and education not for the sake of qualification, but rather higher education in a sense of the independence to pursue your own intellectual interests. I think that's really important, and I think like if people can bring that to a much more accessible level, that's so important. Um, I feel like financial cost. I know like batchmates of mine who were only able to receive an education back in my college because of full financial backing and like scholarship, which they otherwise would not have been able to get. And I think that's like that's amazing, but at the same time, there's more and more of these students who simply cannot afford the increases in tuition fees and all that. And I find that really frustrating. I find that like in the end, like so many higher education institutions are making so many decisions based on financial considerations, instead of sort of securing education as kind of much more of a higher fulfillment need. Because in the end, like people only care about the employability of their graduates, right? And that's really unfortunate because in the end, the education system functions as a streamlining, or like as like a segregating of the population according to their skills, right? Yeah, all of that is really upsetting. Yeah, I mean, ideally, many of us will be able to access higher education regardless of our background and like, financial capacity. But at the same time, it still remains to be a very elitist place and also a profit-seeking place. Um, yeah, and also kind of as a competition thing, like to secure your class or secure your position in society, which is how a lot of people think about it, which is sad, I guess. I don't know how to really handle that. I guess I don't really know how to answer to that dilemma. What did I study at university? I studied anthropology with a minor in psychology. What type of coffee would you recommend to someone who likes lattes? I would recommend, I guess you would like milk, right? Mm, if you like milk, I would suggest trying coconut milk. It's actually really good. But coconut milk, the kind that's actually meant for drinks, not the kind for like desserts, that's common in Southeast Asian cooking. Yeah. If you want to try something without milk, something a bit more surprising, you can try coffee with orange juice. It's actually not bad. Yeah, Melanie, yeah, your comments so true. I think it's really so upsetting that some people really have to spend the prime of their life just working to survive. Yeah. Definitely, I think we should always question our culture. I think that, fundamentally, I believe in like being critical, but not being judgmental. Um, for example, for even for myself, like I will always want to be critical even of my own beliefs, and not to judge people who might think differently from me. So I do think that it's more about always making sure that you have an area of doubt, no matter what you look at, um, even towards yourself. So I would advocate generally for that sort of mentality, and towards our own culture and traditions as well. Yeah. Well, I moved to another country where income and jobs are more equal. So yeah, I feel a lot about this type of question. Um, I've seen on Twitter before that, when people complain about Singapore and like then other people might respond like, just move to another country. If you hate it here, just move to another country. Um, and people have said like, that's a very simplistic answer. The fact is that people want to belong where they grew up, right? I mean, people want to belong to the place that they've grown up in, made childhood memories, made friends, and people form like actual connections to the physical places that they've grown up in. Like, no, that is never a nice thing to want to move away from the physical place that you form an attachment to. So I would say for me, as much as I can, I would love to still live in Singapore and as much as possible make it a much more tolerable place to live in for myself, but also people around me and people who might, resonate with some of the stuff that I feel as well, but also for whoever. Um, but it's gonna be difficult. I think it's gonna be very difficult. Personally, because my family migrated to Singapore, so I firsthand have experienced what it's like to be sort of, you know, be far away from home, even though my home is Singapore, but my family's home is in Indonesia. So I sort of see that there are a lot of benefits, but there's also a lot of the sense of loss that doesn't get addressed when you talk about migration. And I think that's something that I don't want to do again. I feel, yeah. Yeah, education has become a very weird sorting exercise. Do I talk to my parents about these things? They sort of just like don't understand. They're just like, why are you talking to a laptop? No, I've not read The Happiness Hypothesis. What is that book about? And yes, my accent sounds Singaporean because I am Singaporean. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I was a student at YNC. If you see me around campus, I was probably in the dance studio. Uh, Either the dance studio or at brew house. Do I think wisdom or awareness would exist without language? Good question. Uh, yeah, I think, language allows us to establish so many things. Like, it allows us to document things, not just procedural things, so not just like literal things, but also a lot of our own abstract things, right? So, language is also really important in terms of like self-reflection. So I know that, for example, when we talk about psychology, some people who have sort of expressed lower self-awareness, like lower emotional self-awareness, they also tend to score really low on emotion related vocabulary. So people who might score really low on emotional self-awareness, they might not know the difference between different types of negative emotions, such as the difference between anger and disappointment, or the difference between what's it called, like difference between positive things like joy or even relief. Yeah, so language kind of shows that it helps in giving more nuance to things. on naming things. But then again, it's like a chicken egg thing. It's like, does language give rise to more nuance, or does nuance give rise to the, or does nuance create the need for more complicated language? I feel like I'm not really in a place to answer that. Yeah, Melbourne. Yeah, I feel like it's really a tough question, or like a really tough spot to be in when you have the option to migrate, but at the same time, it's there's so many things at stake, like both the good and bad. So I don't know whether I'll ever find myself in such a position. I don't know. Where would I even migrate to? I don't know. Do you get the sense that most people are not concerned with thoughtful analysis of the acceptance of hustle culture? Why do you think most people seem to accept the way things are and go with it? I feel like I touched a little bit about on this in my degrowth video, but I really think it's about time. Uh, I really think that most people won't have the privilege of downtime or just free time to just be. Um, and without that free time, you won't be able to go deep enough into your own motivations or like your own way of life, or like questioning how things happened, or your pattern of life or your habits. Like, you just won't be able to get into that space of questioning those things, at least in a self-directed manner, unless something big happens. Like, normally, it could be the pandemic in this case, but for a lot of people it could be like the death of a loved one that made them sort of pause and reflect on how they've been spending their lives, right? Or it could be a illness that they contract, or sort of them having a close brush with death or something like that, something extreme. And then, people get pushed into this mindset of like, what am I doing this for? Right? But I think for the most part, most of us won't ever be in that space. And that's why I don't really fault people for not questioning their own motivations for doing things that they do, for the way they do. Um, yeah, I guess the only way I can sort of put myself in that picture is just to create content like this, where it kind of feels like a friend to friend conversation, while also kind of just providing a more comfortable space for people to just be in. Yeah, I kind of feel like yeah, most of us would want to just go with the flow, mm, which is an unfortunate thing when going with the flow can lead to a lot of unhealthy outcomes. I don't think going with the flow has any inherent problem, but sometimes the norm can go unchecked a lot. Yeah. What about my thoughts on death? I have not really experienced the loss of a loved one, so I don't have any upfront experience with death. But I actually have a heart condition. It's not anything severe, but it kind of made me question a lot as well. The precarity of life. Um, yeah, and I kind of feel like it's yeah. I don't want to be scared of death, but I really don't know, because I haven't really been able to really confront it up front. Yeah, but I would wish not to be scared of it. But I do have a lot of existential dread, though, with regards to the climate crisis in the next 20 years, next 10 to 20 years. I really don't know what will happen then. Yeah. Oh, the happiness discourse, positive psychology. That is so interesting. Yeah, positive psychology was a huge thing when I was still studying psychology. And I do think it is kind of weird to expect people to up their happiness levels wherever they are when clearly their circumstances are making them upset. So yeah, I feel like the mental health is really so important. I feel like in Singapore, like I was reading this book called The Economics of LGBTQ Equality or something like that. But basically it's just like the economic case for LGBTQ equality. And the main crux of that book was talking about how you will have a much more productive workforce if you have a much more inclusive workforce, and one that is accepting and welcoming and where diversity is encouraged, and that is for the benefit of everyone. You will get greater productivity, you'll get greater levels of happiness at work, and your economy will be great, right? But even then, like it's like it's kind of funny that we have to make an economic case for this, because um well-being should just, yeah, everyone knows that seeking acceptance is like one of the main contributors to someone's well-being in a certain country or society. Obviously no one's going to be happy knowing that they're walking around, in a body or in an identity that they know isn't so welcome. And firsthand, I've also felt that to some degree in Singapore. And it's always very weird to navigate this society as an outcast, or like as someone that toes the line, when in the end you just want to have a home to come back to, you just want to have friends, you just don't want the public to be jeering at you or leering at you, you just want to be safe as everyone else. So that is, yeah, I really feel that as well. Yeah, I don't know about Twitch though. I feel like Twitch, maybe I'll have to set up like a separate software with like much more interactive stuff. But for now, I think YouTube is kind of what I can do. But yeah, if y'all are interested in me moving to Twitch, sure. Yeah. I mean, the main topic, I actually wanted to start off just having a reading discussion, but I think a lot of people were asking a lot of questions. We were talking about the recent closure of my alma mater, Yale US, but we're also talking about different things. We did talk about some books though, so if you scroll up, there'll be some great recommendations by people. Yeah. Am I a spiritual person? I kind of feel like I am to some degree. Not religious per se, but I do believe that there is how to say, there are a lot of things that just cannot be explained by human understanding. I think that's my fundamental like claim. I don't know whether you would read that as spiritual or not, but I definitely feel like there's so many things in this world that we just cannot understand as people. Yeah. Yeah, anti-natalism. I have been reading a bit about it. I don't really know about the kind of meta philosophical arguments against childbirth. That one I don't really know. I still think it is acceptable for people to want to have their own children and to want to build their family. I don't think I have anything against that. But I definitely do think that the climate crisis has a huge part to play in people's family choices. Personally, for me, I never really wanted to have kids in the first place, so that was never an issue for me. But I do think that, the decision to have children sometimes can be a very unthinking one for a lot of people, maybe for slightly older generations, but I think for current generations in the 20s and 30s, a lot of them are being much more intentional about childbirth, about having children. And so you see, like, really, like, in this current climate, only people who are really secure and making intentional choices about having children are having children, or choose not to have children. I feel like sometimes even like it's the people who are the most capable of having children in terms of like having a stable environment and, you know, sort of, I guess, even well-to-do environment. These are the people who are not choosing to have children even. So yeah. But I do think it is gonna get more and more. of a common topic to talk about. The choice not to have children in the face of climate crisis. I did bring this topic up with my parents, but they just can't seem to comprehend it because the world seems to be a very permanent thing to them. Uh, but yeah, I have encountered more and more peers who do not want to have children because of the bleak circumstances. I don't even think it's just climate crisis, but so many things like just general life that's so stressful. Also the kind of loosening of expectations to start a family, things like that. Oh, thanks, Orange Worm, for that nice little comment. I'm so glad. And I feel like at the end of the day, I kind of feel like the content that I make, I just want it to be easy to ease into. Okay, I'm just using the same words, but I don't want it to be a difficult space. I know a lot of intellectual spaces on YouTube are quite forthcoming, but I kind of want to stay in this very welcoming, friendly space, and for everyone to also just talk about whatever they want to talk, but also about critical issues in the world. So yeah, adoption. I wonder how. Yeah, I don't know. I don't doubt my capacity to care for a child, but I definitely doubt my capacity to prepare my child for this society. Does that make sense? Yeah. Well, you have a saying for yourself where surviving in this world is easy, but surviving the expectation of this world is hard. Yeah, I agree. Because I feel like fundamental survival is food, shelter, general purpose in life, which could be sought after through your interests, which don't have to be monetized, by the way. But it's really like the societal pressures and expectations that weigh down on you the most, I would say. And it's a difficult balance between like shutting the world out, but also not being a recluse, you know? Yeah. That's a difficult balance, I feel. Like at some points I just wanted to like shut everything out and figure our own way out, but we live in a society, we can't just shut everything out, in some senses. Yeah, the poorest people are more likely to have kids. I think that's really because yeah, so many different factors. It could be sort of family planning, resources. It also could be that maybe having a family could actually be a lot more affordable in these places. Because having a child, maybe in Singapore, you can't just have a child. You have to make sure your child does well in the education system and does this, and there are all these additional costs that you pump in that is not survival per se, but a lot of societal pressures to invest a certain minimum amount of money in your children. Okay, the rain is getting heavier. I don't know whether y'all can hear it. But it's currently 10:24 p.m. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So I don't know how many of you are joining the climathon that I posted a video about. I've been reading Staying with the Trouble by Donna Haraway. I find that it's such an amazing piece of writing. I understand why Donna Haraway is very much cited a lot. She actually did something on cyborgs as well, about beyond human or like transhuman existence or beings. But the Staying the Trouble, it's a book that talks about ecological ways of thinking that is really very intriguing. More of like, I think in the book she kind of advocates for this theory of string theory. So understanding systems as a whole and not having to sort of tease out individual strings in that system, but rather understanding the relations between different subjects in the whole system, which is really cool. Okay, that is like a big comment. Green Rainbow Revolution is the new leftist totalitarianism. I feel like that's just so many words to unpack. So basically, I don't get it. So can you please break the question down? What do you mean green revolution? And like who is in the green revolution? And also which red totalitarianism are you referring to? An equalitarian dystopia. But why would the green revolution? Okay, I can't understand the question. Okay, so maybe whatever the green revolution is asking for may actually turn out to be a lot more dystopian, right? Like how the whole communist awakening was in response to, you know, the whole yeah, the whole imperialist and colonialist regime, etc. I sort of get it. I mean, I really don't know whether history would repeat itself. I really have no. I mean, I'm not a fortune teller. I can't predict these things, and I see where you're coming from. I do think that that's a legitimate concern to have in the sense that, like, you know, it a lot of these things are centered, a lot of these socialist ideas, eco-socialist ideas are centered upon this like for the people, for the commons sort of mentality, which we will see is always repeated in history, again and again. And the fact is that, you know, humans, there will be some people that will corrupt the movement over and over again. And I wouldn't want to say that just because some people corrupted the system, that the system is wrong or the ideology is wrong. Because, you know, I feel like my critique towards capitalism would be in the same vein that, you know, because the fact is that capitalists, like, you know, how you say, public, you know, companies when they go public, like when these things, you know, are, you know, it's sort of, capitalism was also founded upon this like idea of access, you know, that people could, from the public, could own assets of certain companies, and that profits could be then used for the advancement of people. And, you know, it was supposed to encourage innovation. It was supposed to be the most efficient way of creating material wealth that people wanted. So I feel like, you know, but of course we know that, you know, some people have come in and started to corrupt the system and to sort of use it not in a way that profits are supposed to be used for. So I don't really think it is, you know, yeah. So in the end, I kind of feel like talking about ideologies, whether they're innately going to be corrupt or not, I don't think that's necessarily the case. But definitely there will be people who will take advantage of certain ideologies to their own selfish advantage. And it's really, I don't think this is something that we can avoid, but rather this is something that, you know, systems have to be put in place that so that these people do not overly kind of take advantage of such structures that are meant to be providing for the people, providing for the commons and things like that. Yeah. Does that kind of make sense? My answer. You know, I can see the parallels though, because there's this book called oh, what was it called? Let me go and search it. Oh, Okay, so there's this book called Strangers: Essays on the Human and Non-Human by Rebecca Tamas. And in that book, she did talk that there was a short essay talking about how some of these like socialist ideals, eco-socialist ideals were much more, you could see like strands of those thought from like way beyond, way before like the industrial age. um and I can sort of see like, these people were communists, but they were also promoting a lot of eco-socialist ideals. So I kind of feel like it's a repetition of time, right? It's a repetition of like commons and then authority and then people and authority. It's always about cycles, I feel. So yeah. Am I a realist or optimist? I used to be super optimistic. I used to be like super idealistic. Now I feel like I try to be a bit more realistic. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, let me type the. Where would I like to visit in the future to complement my book learning? Actually, I don't really have a place in mind, honestly. Yeah, the libraries kind of are pretty good for me right now. Yeah, I feel like that prediction is kind of sad because so many people, during the industrial age, like so many people, a lot of theorists actually predicted that automation would reduce the need for working, and it would actually enable people to be much more fairly paid. I don't know the exact mechanics of that all, but it's kind of sad that now we're working so much more. Um, and we're also working in a lot of jobs that don't have a direct meaning to it. So I feel like, I mean, I guess it all started from the factory age where, you would, from someone who would produce the entire shoe, from when like you would accept like when you would create an entire shoe, now you're only maybe producing the shoelaces, etc. So I feel like it kind of starts from there. And it's kind of sad that that has evolved from laborers work, like manual labor work, to work that is, yes, it's office work, it's intellectual work, but at the same time it's also so detached from the the whole process. Like you're just one person in a whole massive chain of command. I think that also has a big impact on how you see your work. uh Religious texts, I have read some parts of the Bible. Yeah, but religion is a pretty touchy topic for me, so I'm not very keen on answering this. But I do think that religion is a very important, um, yeah, like it is a very important area to address for a lot of people, and I want to say that it fulfills a really huge need for a lot of people. Yeah, so I really don't agree when people discount religion as irrational or like not based in truth, because I think people didn't come this far just based on rationality. If you think about it. Would you say that Singapore is more liberal or conservative? I would say, I don't know whether the words liberal and conservative, like the two ends, really capture the whole thing. I would say that Singapore is very open in some specific areas. So like things like the free market, in terms of like open in foreign influence, yes. I would say generally as a society, Singapore is very much unable to rock the boat. That's basically it. I don't know whether that will be seen as conservative, because I feel like conservative is more of like holding on to a specific set of values, principles, like no matter what. But I just feel like Singapore is in a position where it has to not be the first mover, but it also can't be the last. So, and because of that, it has to have a very strange combination of adopting a lot of global trends, but also not being too much of a first taker. That's what I feel. What's my view on marriage? I feel like getting married for love is completely valid. However, where I am, marriage is very tied to home ownership, and that's something that I, yeah, have a lot of qualms about, because I'm not gonna get married anytime soon, or at least I don't think I am gonna get married. So that means I just cannot really have a home under the public housing in Singapore. So that makes me feel a lot of things. I don't know. What am I doing right now professionally? I am actually doing substitute teaching for an A level subject. So it's kind of part time work for now. But I used to work at a cafe last few months. Yeah. Remark or Gorky? No, I've not. Do I regularly stream? No. I regularly stream? Some people have said I should move to Twitch. Maybe I should move to Twitch and make it a bit more formal. It seems like everyone enjoys such streams. Yeah, definitely agree with what you said, Orange One. Yeah, so I think definitely in Singapore this is a constant upgrade. There's this constant need to upgrade. You can't stay stagnant. Yeah, you always have to stay relevant. There's a very strong narrative we have here. Like we always have to stay relevant. I don't even know what that means. What's the average price of a home in Singapore? It really depends. Public housing, it can range, you know, anywhere in the 100,000s, I think. I don't know if subsidies do. I haven't really researched into the subsidies, but it would fall within the range of like a few 100,000s, um, on on average. But of course, if you're choosing a location that's very well sought after in a very much more established place, it could go up to like the high 100,000s, or even like I guess I even have a place being sold for like 1 million. Um, yeah, but for private property, which is the private market, definitely millions for an apartment. So if you think about it, that's kind of crazy. It's like a average like 30 to 40 year mortgage on $1 million apartment. Yeah. So my cat has woken up. I don't know whether she'll be wanting to eat soon. Yeah, I've not read literature, but I've seen some videos about it, and I think that's really upsetting that, because of the whole like people being unable to pay rent and facing evictions, and all these corporations are taking advantage of this situation and buying over the houses and developing them into rental spaces. I think that's really like predatory. Yeah. That's really upsetting. I think that's really, yeah. I feel like maybe in Singapore, a lot of people have complaints about the public housing, but to some degree, because it is under the direct, um, like under the direct purview of the government, it is still possible to demand certain controls or regulations. I don't know. What genre do I find myself mostly reading? I find myself mostly reading, I mean, definitely non-fiction, but nowadays I read a lot of climate-related books. Yeah, but I try to read as broadly as I can, and my cat is here now. Oh, hello. Uh, she's just sitting in front of me. Do you want to say hi? Her name is Asian T. Hi. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Have I considered academia or teaching as my career? I am doing substitute teaching right now. I am finding it pretty interesting. I enjoy I enjoy the process. Definitely, it is a lot more enjoyable to engage to interact with students than it is to be in an office situation. So that much I'm clear. Yeah. So maybe I would consider teaching. I wouldn't really consider academia because I find the whole sector like really inaccessible, and the technical stuff is really hard to get into. Yeah. How does entrepreneurship work in Singapore? I don't think I'm able to answer that question. Hmm. Good question though. How does it work in Singapore? Honestly, I don't know. We don't really have a very huge entrepreneurship space unless you're talking about like a lot of tech startups and maybe. Okay, that's her digging her little box. So yeah. Do you think being listless is a bad thing? No, I don't think so. I think it's good to be bored. Yeah. Or I think it's good to be restless. I mean, I'm a very restless person. It's a good and a bad thing. I think it's bad when I can't really focus on one thing very well. But I think it's good in a sense that that means you're always interested in something. You're always going to be interested in something. Yeah. How do you read nonfiction? I really don't know. I feel like for me, I just enjoy reading nonfiction because I have questions in mind when I seek out books to read. So, for example, like if I'm thinking about like degrowth, and then when I seek out a book on degrowth, and at a very basic level, the book would be interesting to me. Yeah. Okay, on remembering books, right? For me, I do this method of recounting or like writing in a journal three main lessons that I have from the book and then my personal reflections while reading the book. That helps me a bit more with my insights, not really about the actual statements of the book. Of course, it is not the most useful if you want to do direct citations from books, but yeah, hi. Yeah, so I think she's hungry. Yes. Hi. Okay. Whoa, whoa, whoa. She's typing. What? Oh, thanks for the compliment, Varvara. Call cats Mishies. Did I pronounce that right? Mishies? That's so cute. Cat in Bahasa is kucing, if anyone's interested. Yeah, she's purring right now. What kinds of books do I usually like to read? I read a lot of different books. I like to read books about Singapore, but also a lot about climate. Oh, okay, she's suppressing my laptop. I hope she doesn't accidentally end the stream. Hey! Okay. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. Yeah. Oh, Cicely Choi. I know some people have said that I look like certain celebrities. I don't know how true that is. Wow, actually, it's really cool reading Chinese philosophy. I mean, I did read a few texts from Chinese philosophy back in college, and it's very interesting. I find that it's super good to be able to reflect on the differences between different types of philosophies. I haven't had much of a chance to read philosophies beyond like Chinese philosophy and like general Western classics like Greek philosophy. Um, you can see she's on my lap right now. Hi. Yes. Okay. Hi. Do you sleep well? Hmm? Mm. Wow. I think for me, like at some point, I was watching quite a lot of videos on the way of like the Tao, like so Taoism, and I feel like sometimes Chinese philosophy, when it's translated into English, can be very frustrating because it doesn't really capture the sort of like tradition, literary tradition of Chinese texts. As much as I try to read Chinese in its original text, of course, I don't think my Chinese is of that level where I would understand such classical writing. Oh, yeah, but I do think that Chinese philosophy has a very interesting sort of slant towards more of a detachment or sort of a collective and very much hierarchical society actually. And a lot of this, but there is a lot of this like mentor disciple, like master disciple sort of relation that is quite common in a lot of Greek philosophy as well. Oh my god, would I ever do a master's? I really don't know. I feel like I have a lot of like internal reluctance to do anything further in academia because personally I felt like it was quite a challenge for me to do academia. Um, yeah, but we'll see if I want to. Julia Gallup. No, I've not seen their stuff. Any thoughts on undergrad life? Well, of course, in the school of computing, it's going to be hard to discuss such a thing. I think undergrad was really, I mean, I'm going to sound like everyone else, but it was really like the best time of my life in terms of um, how I was able to study and challenge myself so much. Uh, yeah, so I feel like I would say that it's really because I went to like a liberal arts education, and it being based in Singapore made me see a lot of things differently. Hi, yes. Hi, thanks for commenting, Tim. Great. Yeah, I guess some of you are from YC in this chat. So I never really expected to do YouTube after graduation. It was something I just sort of fell into, um, and then it sort of developed into what it is today. I mean, I think during my undergrad years, I always felt like I was a very average student. Not that it was a bad thing, but it was just like that. I mean, it took me a while to really get into where I am today. Yeah. Uh, yes, thanks for watching from India. Yes, I actually have um, I read Amitav Ghosh's book, and I am very, very interested in reading more of his works because I mean, the book that I read was nonfiction, so I want to read his novels. I heard that they're great, and also I have this book here that I just got. Um, yeah, Arunati Roy. Yeah, yet again, it's a nonfiction. Um, I know that she's also known for her novels, but yeah, I have a tendency to pick nonfiction. Yeah, so these are the two Indian authors I guess I know for now. Uh, Yeah, but I would love to explore more if you have recommendations. Yeah, I realize I haven't really read much authors from South Asia as well. It's not just India. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. What is my ultimate goal? I really don't know. I guess I'm just taking things as they are right now. But I guess my ultimate goal is still to be able to have a kind of a communal space, like a physical space where I can host a community. Yeah. Asian P, you want to say something? Come on. Ooh. So this is Asian P. Sorry, sorry. Yeah. I guess I don't think it's a ever ending journey to want to ask more and more questions. I think even for myself, I first started out being really interested in gender studies and queer theory because that was something that was really at the forefront of my life back then, and it still is a very important part of my life. But as I moved on and I started to sort of be a lot more interested in climate and things like that, it sort of shifted towards that. So I think it's kind of a never-ending inquiry on things. Yeah. Oh, it's Agent P, so like agent, like a spy, like a super spy P. Um, it's taken from Phineas and Ferb reference, the cartoon. It was like she was named by my friend who was uh, fostering a litter of kittens, of which my cat was one of the kittens in that litter. Yeah, and so she named my cat, and I kept the name because I think she's a bit stealthy. Like she likes to attack from the corner. So I think that's why she was given the name Agent, like Agent P. Okay, wow. Okay, thanks for that. For that recommendation. I'll take note of that. Yeah, okay. Maybe I should really kind of make this more formal, like a virtual book club. I don't know what I feel about making everyone read the same book, or rather, if we all discuss different books together. Because I know for a lot of other people, they actually assign a book. Yeah. Well, hey, don't type there. Yeah, Asian P like Perry the Platypus, right? Hey. Okay. So I think I'll be ending the live stream soon. Thanks so much for joining me. Yeah, because it's time to feed Asian P, right? I feel like I'm always ending my streams when it's time for her to eat. Okay, so thanks so much for tuning in. I will try to figure out how to work Twitch out. If I guess it'll be a much more engaging platform to be on, much more interactive, I guess. Yeah, so I'll figure that out, and I think I might try to do this weekly, um, yeah, or at least bi-weekly, because I think it's really nice to be able to talk to everyone at least once a week. Yeah. Oof. Okay. All right. Okay, so yeah, thanks for all the comments. Yes, wow, queer and gender studies reach queer reads library. Hmm, that's really cool. Yeah. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and I hope you're having a good day. Oh, okay, what you looking at? Yeah, I hope that if it's night for you, wherever you are, hope you're gonna have a nice evening or a nice night. But if you're just starting your day, I hope the day is going well for you, that you have a great start to your day. So, oh my god, don't go there. Hey. Okay, so thanks and take care, everyone. I'll see you next week. Yeah. Okay. Bye. You want to say bye? Bye. Bye. Oh, okay.